Okay, so today I wanted to spend the time to talk to you about one of the biggest mistakes that I see pretty much everybody making all the time on their high ticket sales calls. And it's such a simple thing to fix that, to be honest with you, it just deserves a whole video unto itself. And it's just not understanding the importance of listening when you're on your high ticket sales calls. I don't know for what reason, I don't know why. The vast majority of business owners and high ticket closers, they believe that in order to be good at sales, your core objective is to have the gift of the gab and to be talking all of the time, when the reality of the situation is that the very best salespeople in the world are the people who listen, because they're collecting information. And there's a very famous quote by Abraham Lincoln that says, "If you gave me 6 hours to cut down a tree, I'd spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe." And I think that principle applies extremely well when it comes to high ticket sales, because if you're not spending sufficient time understanding what it is that you're dealing with, you're not going to close. It's the whole reason why when you jump onto a high ticket sales call, you spend a good 20 to 30 minutes just asking questions so you have context of the prospect's current situation, desired outcomes, and the problems they're facing alongside the consequences, so that you have something to be able to leverage and you're able to position your offer in a unique way where it's actually going to be viable and suitable for them. To give you another way to try and understand this, and the reason why it's so important that you are spending a considerable amount of time asking questions, and I'm not just talking about in the discovery phase, I'm especially talking about in the objection handling phase, and even sometimes midway through the pitch if you use a pillar structure, is a boxing analogy, right? Now, if you look at a boxing match, one thing that you'll often notice is the first round, second round is usually pretty dull. It's quite slow. And sure, we could put that down to the fact that when people get into the ring, they're a little bit anxious, they're getting used to being in the stadium, whatever it might be. But the reason why this happens is because the boxer is sussing out their opponent. They're watching their moves. They're seeing how they're moving around the ring. They're seeing what happens when they throw a jab. Do they drop their shoulder? Do they lift up their jaw? Whatever it might be. Where is an opening? And it's the exact same thing when you're doing sales, because in order to be elite at sales, your goal actually isn't to push constantly. It is just to know when to push, and when you do push, for it to be effective. Or in other words, coming back to the boxing analogy, it's not to be constantly throwing punches. It's so that when you do throw your punches, they land. And especially when you're going for a knockout blow, you're making sure that you've set up the other punches that you've put out to ensure that when that connects, you're going to win the fight. And that's the way that you want to look at sales. That's the way you want to look at high ticket sales, is you're collecting as much information as you can, as much ammo as you can, so that when it's time for you to actually try and shift the prospect's perspective, you know that you're going to be able to do that. Now, I want to lean into this even more because it's really, really important. You might be like, Jack, I get it, but I see this again. I've told this so many times to some of my clients. I've told this to people that I've trained, and it often takes them a little while to fully wrap their head around this. So let's say, for example, you're in an argument, or you're in a debate, or you're just trying to change somebody's perspective on something, and they are vehemently against what you are saying. Like, they disagree with you to a massive extent. The easiest thing that you can do to shift their perspective is to understand why they have that perspective in the first place. Because if you don't, you can't be sure that the points that you're making are going to land. Again, it comes back to this boxing analogy. And so if you take the time to fully understand why somebody holds the perspective they do, to the extent where you can see their point, like you actually can see why they believe what they do, then when you're giving your rebuttals, when you're giving your reframes, you're going to have targeted conviction that's going to poke holes in their logic, so you know it is going to resonate with them. And so coming to the soft skills that you need to be really cognizant of when you are on your high ticket sales calls, the key thing really revolves around being client focused, like really paying attention on understanding your client. It is your fault. You have to take full responsibility. There's only 3 situations where if a call doesn't close, it's not your fault. The first one is if the prospect doesn't have money. All right. And I'm not talking about the prospect coming to you and saying, hey, look, I don't have the money for this. Like, even that, you need to do a financial audit and you need to do a deep dive into that to figure out whether or not that's the case. I am talking about you having a clear understanding of how much money they have in their current account, how much money they have in their savings, how much money they have available on credit cards, whether they would be available to get access to financing, whether that be financing that you provide or they are able to sort out themselves, whether they have capital in their stocks, whether they have capital in crypto. Like, you're doing a deep dive to substantiate their claim that they don't have the money. And the reason why this is important is because if they do have the money, but they're saying they don't have the money and they don't want to move forwards, is most likely because you're not handling the real objection, right? And this is why it's so important to ask questions, because otherwise you won't know for yourself whether or not you're dealing with the right thing. Because they could have a fear objection and that's why they don't want to move forwards. It could be that they have a value objection. It could be that they have a product objection. It could be that they need to go and speak to their partner because the money that they have is not necessarily theirs, right? And so this is also why so many people struggle with the time to think about it objection, especially when they're just getting started out, because they think that it's actually real. But it's not. The time to think about it objection just does not exist, like, at all. I'm telling you that as a fact. Time to think about it objection. Anytime you hear that, you are dealing with a smoke screen. Okay. But the key thing is, again, it's your fault. If the prospect is lacking in confidence or they are lacking in clarity, and you know that they shouldn't be, you shouldn't be defaulting to getting frustrated, whether that's frustrated with them or frustrated with yourself. Because if they're lacking clarity, it's because you haven't given them enough information, or more likely, the right information to not have them be confused. And if they're lacking in confidence, again, the same principle applies. It's because you haven't relayed the right information. And simply by questioning and digging down and understanding, okay, well, when you say you're lacking in clarity, could you just elaborate on that? What specifically about the process is causing you to feel like you need a little bit more clarity on this? Something to that effect. By digging down, you are able to be a lot more specific. A lot of the time, I'm sure on your high ticket sales calls, you'll have prospects get out of the pitch and they'll say, well, this kind of just seems like everything else that I've done before. Prime example is if you're selling client acquisition. Oh, so we will help you to create an offer, and then after we've helped you to create an offer, we'll make sure that you know exactly who you're going to be targeting, what your ICP is, and we'll help you with the lead sourcing side of things, and then we'll do outreach to the market in your booking calls. Like, that's the general principles, the general pillars of what a client acquisition offer is for agencies or whatever it might be, right? If someone's coming out the back end of the pitch and saying, well, this seems like everything else, it's because you haven't highlighted your USPs. So that is an opportunity for you to dig down and say, okay, when you say this seems like everything else, could you just elaborate on that? And in terms of the pitch, in terms of the offer, in terms of the lead sourcing, in terms of X, in terms of Y, in terms of Z, where does this seem the same? This is us spending that time to understand their perspective first, because in doing so, we can see where the gaps are and then fill in the gaps with the right information. But the crucial thing that I will wrap this video up with is just stop being so obsessed with closing. Like, just focus on trying to help your prospects, because the more that you focus on helping your prospects, the more that you're able to put yourself into their shoes, the more that you're able to see their perspective, I promise you, the easier it is going to be for you to be able to close, because you'll be able to see their objections coming a mile off from the line of questioning because of everything that they've said, because you've been engaging in active listening and actually truly understanding them. And that also is going to massively help you from a rapport standpoint, in helping you to build trust and helping them to see you as someone who's authentic, which in turn is also going to lead you to being able to close a lot faster. But anyway, short video today, didn't want to ramble on too much. Hope you managed to get a lot of value from this. Please, for your own sake, implement what I have explained to you. Ask more questions. Like, it comes back to this whole thing, give me 6 hours to cut down a tree. I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. implement this, and I promise you, you'll start closing more deals. If you like the video, feel free to like the video. If you want to subscribe, feel free to subscribe. If you want to book a call, feel free to book a call. But with all of that said, I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll speak to you soon. Peace.